Hi, welcome back to Talk and Insights, the podcast where we unpack the ideas, innovations, and people shaping the world of market research and insights. I'm your host, Antonio, and we've been talking about it plenty in the podcast, and this is another episode, but with a different twist. This time we're going to talk about synthetic data, but is it really the future of research, or is it another tech distraction, or are really people using the correct term when they're referencing synthetic data? To help us explore all of this, we're joined by Richard Preeti. He's the executive director at Verve, and recently he created a article in Research World titled Why We Don't Talk About Synthetic Data and Why You Shouldn't Either. It's a great read, and it's different from the other articles that we've been putting out. In it, Richard makes a case of caution and challenging the industry to just think more critically when we're embracing synthetic data as a term, as a shortcut to insights, and as a way to reference our work. So let's get into it. Without further ado, here's Richard. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your time. As I was saying before we kind of started this whole recording, this whole conversation started because of an article you wrote for Research World, Why We Don't Talk About Synthetic Data and Why You Shouldn't Either. And the title, it's so strong because we've been doing a bunch of these episodes about synthetic data and trying to understand what it is. And when I read the article, I was like, we need to talk about the other sides as well. Like, why should we talk about it? And what's there? So I want to start by asking kind of like, what's your idea of synthetic data and what's one of the things that you think or you wish that more people understood about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's worth saying as well, when we're saying in our article that we don't like the term synthetic data and we don't want to use it, it's not that we're against the use of AI for insight. It's quite the opposite, actually. It's more a semantic thing as much as anything. There's probably a few reasons why we avoid the term synthetic. First of all, I think it carries quite pejorative associations. Potentially, as a term, synthetic suggests cheap or fake to some extent. And I think in this age of authenticity, we all know authenticity is the most important currency out there at the moment. It doesn't necessarily inspire confidence or trust. So to some extent, just the term synthetic, I think as an industry, we might need to think about rebranding it and what we sort of do with it as a term. The second thing with synthetic as a term, I think it's been used as a catch-all for any sort of AI generated outputs or any AI generated data. And it's not just one thing. There's so many different approaches and tools that have some form of AI generated data or AI generated output. So you have your more statistically generated synthetic data, which is where it's sort of statistical modeling, which might expand on existing data sets to boost existing data, to fill in gaps, to augment samples, particularly where there's a small or a niche sample. And that's not really using any sort of large language model inference or anything like that. Then you have these more kind of black box, purely synthetic sample solutions where it's not transparent what the AI has been trained on to create these outputs at all. Then you have things like composite personas, where you're using multiple data inputs to derive segments or derive personas, and they're fantastic for early stage exploration, ideation, those sorts of things, and we're using those, quite a lot ourselves. And then you have AI-generated simulations of audiences, which are trained on large data sets to represent a particular audience. And again, that's an area which we can talk about, but we're playing in a lot with our Verve intelligent personas, where you can use them to test ideas, look at future scenarios, be more predictive. But I think my point is all these different approaches do slightly different things and have been tested with varying degrees of success. I think particularly the kind of statistical augmentation piece. I mean, I've seen we've tried it ourselves with mixed results. I know other people have as well. And I just think, like in the same way we choose between qual and quant. So, whether we are, do we want depth? Do we want breadth? Are we trying to explore? Do we want firm measurement? We need to think about all these different types of synthetic data solutions or AI generated solutions and not just use a kind of catch-all term, because I think it's confusing for people. I think we can be more precise. And then I guess the third reason, which we explore in the article, and it's kind of our main thinking really, is around when we're doing AI generated outputs, everything we're doing is tied to real world human data. So the simulations we build, the foundation of those are usually our clients' data. So either from primary research or other carefully curated sources. And I think that's the key differentiator. Everything we're doing is grounded back in this idea of human truth. There's an audit trail where the outputs can be linked directly to real world inputs. And I think that's really important because, again, while the AI is extrapolating from those and we are using them to produce new data, everything is grounded back in real human data. And we don't want to lose that as an industry. I think, we're all about humans. We're all about human intelligence. That's what we do as an industry. We understand people. And I think if we're using the term synthetic data and not focusing on how we're using human data to help train the AI to produce these simulations, we're losing some of the special sauce of what it is we do as an industry as well. So very much not against AI or the use of AI generated data, quite the opposite. It's more the terminology that I think we need to nail down as an industry.
Maybe as an industry, we should just do like industry-wide research to understand what's the better naming for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the other problems with it as well, this idea of synthetic, and I think some of these potentially off-the-shelf synthetic solutions, effectively, if everyone's using the same off-the-shelf solution, you're going to get the same generic off-the-shelf answers coming back. Everyone's going to be getting the same information. And then, everyone starts to lose any sort of competitive advantage. So again, from our point of view, if you're starting with the client's data set, their own primary proprietary data they've got from real people, they're going to get very different answers to another client who has a different data set. And so that input, that human data, that primary data is more important than ever. And it's going to mean that, our clients get better answers as a result. So it's another way to sort of move away from this idea of just generic, that everyone can get the same answers from a synthetic solution.
Yeah. Do you feel like both brands and companies and even researchers are just like being drawn to synthetic data just because of the buzz of the word? And perhaps they should just make not only a better use of the word, but also like understand the technology, understand what they're actually going into, and understanding like the outputs of it, right? Is there a more, I don't want to say responsible, but like, is there a more, air quotes, responsible way to use it or to use AI and the technology that we have nowadays?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the reason why I think people are so drawn to it. I think that's a really good question, a really interesting one. And there's a reason why it's suddenly on everyone's radar, isn't there? I mean, I think conceptually, the idea of AI generated data solves loads of industry problems. Like, we know one of the challenges with primary research is that, it has a certain speed attached to it, a certain cost attached to it, a certain access to it as well. Like, if you're trying to reach niche groups or hard to find audiences, like, it's quite difficult or certainly very expensive to do via traditional means. Whereas AI, in many respects, and data generated via AI is a silver bullet. Like, all those problems of speed and time and efficiency can almost go away to some extent. And the other thing I think that gets people excited here is we know there are some challenges in the industry with quantitative data from access panels. There is a data quality challenge that's very real and seems to be getting worse from everything I'm sort of reading, because ironically that you get AI generated chatbots turning up in access panels. We're not treating panelists perhaps the way we should. We send them long, boring surveys. Therefore, the data you get back is, has issues as well. And therefore, avoiding that route and being able to use AI generated data helps to remove some of those challenges. So I can see why everyone gets really excited about it. But as you say, it's not as simple as all just going to a synthetic data solution and removing all of those problems at the click of a button, because there's different ways that we should be thinking about that data. And to my point earlier, the responsible way to think about it is actually, how are we training the AI to produce those results, those black boxes that are producing the outputs here? Are we confident in what we are training them on to get the best answers there? And ultimately, the responsible usage of AI is going to come back to that point I've mentioned a few times around the human truth guiding them. That's what's going to give us the interesting answers, because I think humans, in all our thought, real data from real humans is messy. We know we are irrational as a species. We will say things that you don't necessarily expect, that AI perhaps can't predict. But there is real variance in the way we talk, and culturally, things will just come out of nowhere that's real and that's human. And we need to be taking those real insights and using that with the AI to guide the AI to get better outputs. And I think that's the responsible use of AI. It's almost, yes, I think as an industry, we should be using all the benefits here and the potential and the opportunity from AI, but we also need to double down on that human part. And so in this world, I think the qualitative research, particularly deep ethnographic, real qualitative research, is more important than ever, because that's where you get the real gold of real human outputs, and we should be using that to guide the AI. So as an industry, responsibility should come about thinking about when we are using AI generated data, how has it been created? What's been used to train the AI? How recently had it seen new human data that's going to give those different interesting up-to-date responses? And then we should be very transparent to our clients as well about the AI we're using, how we've trained it, and how that impacts the results too. It's all about, I think, transparency is a key part of everything here in terms of how we're talking about it as an agency, but also how clients are thinking about the data as well.
That's very
like any good research, really. I guess this is not new. In the same way that clients before would never, we'd hope, make a decision off the back of just a single quant survey with a small sample. It's all about triangulating those results with multiple inputs to make better decisions. This is the same thing again. AI can give us a really good input, but again, the client needs to triangulate that with multiple sources to get better results.
That's very interesting, and kind of touches on the question that I was going to ask next, because you've been in the industry for close 25 years or something like that, right?
So
I imagine that you haven't been working at Verve all this time, but you have been on different companies, different ideas, different people, and also different technologies. I can imagine in this past 25 years, the way that you do research has been changed quite a lot. And I was going to ask, what other technologies or what other ways to do research with technology have you used and still use that connect to that human component that you were talking about, that facilitate that human component apart from AI? Because as you were saying, like, we still have AI, but there's the whole other spectrum. And in a couple of weeks ago, we were having an episode, and we were talking about just that, the way that we do research cannot just focus on one thing, and it's not one survey to just do everything. Sometimes you need multiple surveys, sometimes you need the multimodal research, as in one of the episodes we call it, because we need different types of ways to do research to get a good outcome. If you just focus on one, it's weak. Weak.
Exactly that. It's never going to be a perfect answer. But I think it's interesting you mentioned, in fact, I've been in the industry now for longer than I probably care to think. When I just started, I think online research was just happening, and I sort of remember then all the furore and kind of uproar about this isn't as good as in person, and it's never going to last, and it's biased, and all the rest of it. And so 20 years later, I think we're going for the same sort of transformational period, and we're seeing some of those same arguments coming back that, you can't trust the AI, it's biased and so forth. But I think the reality is, we all know with any research, it's never perfect. You're never collecting a single universal truth. A survey, even a well-written and well-managed survey, it's only giving you a snapshot. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's not a complete answer. You're always going to need these multiple inputs to get to the best responses. And again, I think that's very true. I think the beauty of AI is that it enables us to use more data than we ever have before to come get to those answers. So that can include AI generated data from simulations and personas and so forth. But also what we can be doing, and this is a big area of focus over the last 4 or 5 years for me, is using more cultural intelligence as well. It's not just primary research. There's a whole range of fantastic inputs out there where real people are talking in natural voices about all sorts of topics. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of posts and pieces of information. And AI enables us to take those and actually that sort of messy, unstructured data and actually help to structure it in a way that we can make sense of it. And it can do things like pull out themes and synthesize, and it can code things with semiotic properties and help us to understand that data. So on any project, what we try to do is combine those 3 pillars of primary human intelligence, because you still want to talk to people, and that's really important to get that sort of real input from people in a room. And I think that's where the qualitative work becomes even more interesting and exciting. Proper in the moment, deep ethnographic type work is really, really important. The cultural overlay, those understanding those bigger macro trends and forces that are out there that are influencing behaviors, and we can access through online sources. Again, that's not about just pointing AI at the internet and scraping any old nonsense, because you're going to get rubbish back. There's still a real human curation element there, which is more important than ever. And we have a cultural intelligence team who specialize in finding those sources, and it's not as easy as it looks to come up with a good data set. You can combine all those sources, all those primary inputs, plus then you've got the AI to help join the dots between it. Then you start to get better answers coming back. And I think that joining the dots again is something that AI is very, very good at in a way, or make connections in a way that as humans we don't do necessarily. Now, some of those connections can be surprising, or people might see them as hallucinations sometimes because it's given a different answer. But it doesn't necessarily mean those answers are wrong. It can just stretch your thinking in a different way. But that's again comes back to whereas as insight experts, as insight leaders, we need to be thinking, using our expertise to interpret what comes back and then playing that back to our clients. So it's not necessarily new methods per se. I think it's those old skills and traditional skills and expertise we've had, those industry skills, just become even more important because we can use the AI to do all that heavy lifting and processing of so much more data than before. But we can then use our expertise to focus more on the strategic thinking, spend more time on that part of it. And I think that's really exciting as an industry because we're no longer spending so much time collecting data. We can actually spend more time understanding what it means and helping our clients to solve problems with it. So I think there are new methods with AI, there are new solutions, and we should be thinking it's not just about efficiency, it's about new ways of getting better answers, but fundamentally those skills we've always had are just coming more and more to the forefront. And I think as an industry, if we're going to thrive within this, this new AI era, that's the piece we should really be promoting. That's what our clients are going to be buying from us, is that human expertise. Like the collection and the processing of the data is less interesting to clients. They want to have people to understand humans and can interpret that data in a meaningful way. So I don't fundamentally think the skills we've all been working on for the last 20 years or more go away. And if anything, they become more important in this world. We just now have more powerful tools to help us collect the data.
Fantastic. I always like to end with a question. Our audience is from the high level C-suite, but also to the newcomers in the industry, the people that just left the university, are just starting in the industry. And I like to ask, do you have any advice for them, for both the C-suite, the high level that are in the game for years, but also for the ones that are just starting? Is there any advice?
Yeah, well, I guess for the C-suites, I think the idea of getting closer to your customers and understanding your customers better has been the holy grail for as long as I can remember. I think traditionally, and we've always talked about that as an industry, and we've done it with some success, but because of the restrictions of the past, the time, the cost, and everything else, we've not always been able to do that as effectively as we might, and to communicate that back to clients now as well. I think what the C-suite now have through these AI enhanced approaches and the use of AI generated data and simulation, so forth, you can have that insight available to them at the touch of a button. Effectively, there are ways to instantly get access to the real understanding of your customers when you want it, to have your customers on tap. And I think therefore this idea of customer centricity can become real now, like genuinely something we can deliver, and something that CMOs and CTOs or whoever else can just have that understanding of at their fingertips, which is great. So I think there's a chance here for customer insight to be, have a more of a seat at the table now within these sort of C-suite meetings, and actually inform decisions more, because it's more flexible, it's more accessible, and it can be more powerful now than it ever can. I think, as long as we have the guardrails in place, as I mentioned up front, about the quality of what's going in and the interpretation of what's coming out. So I think for C-suite, that's really exciting. I think for people just starting in their careers as well, I mean, within this space, there will, of course, be new technical skill sets that we need to learn, like understanding how to make the most out of AI, and all the tools and techniques are out there is going to be important. But at the same time, I think people coming on board now are going to be more AI native than any of us are. So, I don't see that being a potential problem. But I think the thing that's going to be really important as consultants within Insight is, as it's always been, it's just that understanding of people and understanding your clients' businesses and their problems and what they're trying to solve. And actually that consultancy piece, again, is the bit that's going to be more important. So in terms of where to focus your energies and expertise, it will be in that space of actually understanding business problems, business decisions, and helping our clients to get to a better place. As I said, I think qualitative skills of talking to people and understanding people and watching people is going to be more important than ever too. So that feels like the important place to play. I think some of the bits in the middle, the more, the simpler data-driven bits might go away, and AI can kind of take that away. But there's still so much opportunity in this industry for people coming in to do more exciting and interesting work than we've ever done before, which I think is great.
That's great. And if I may add, keep learning. I feel like That's the thing. Like if you
Yes.
just stagnate and start doing your thing, and you forget to look what everyone else is around you doing, you will just gonna be forgotten in a way.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's very true. I mean, I think it's really exciting time. I felt more energized about working in this industry than than I can remember for the last few years, because, as you say, we should be curious people, and now there's so much to learn and take on board. And as an industry, I think it is our responsibility to grab this opportunity. I know we've had you know there is some concern about what it's going to mean for jobs and what it's going to mean for us as an industry, and rightly so. We should all be thinking about that, but we shouldn't let that, the negativity about it sort of outweigh the potential positive opportunities here. And also, we need to be clear as an industry, like, the technology is not going away. Like, we can't pretend that it is. And actually, it's our responsibility to work out how we maximize its potential, get the best out of it, but also use it to maintain the credibility and the skills we've had for years, and that trust that people have in us to produce high quality human data. Like, they still look to us for that trust element. Because one of the biggest barriers, I think, with AI is people's trust. Like, it's how do I trust AI generated outputs? Like, how can I have confidence in it? And as I say, we're using human data to make sure we can validate and verify against, but that's what clients and the industry need, is that trust and confidence in it, and that's what we all need to help get to. And I think we are, and it's really exciting to be in this space at the moment. And then, but we always need to have those guardrails in our heads about how we continue to get the best out of AI, I think.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, since it's so easy to interact, and I keep saying this in a more personal day-to-day stuff, that it's so easy for us to use a chatbot or a little thing that you can just write a prompt and it answers you back. It's so easy that I feel like some people just forget to use the whole set of tools, and they just have like this magic brush, and they forget that you also have a ruler, a eraser, and some other things. You can just use
Yeah,
them as well.
exactly. Yeah, and you're right. Anyone can type a question into ChatGPT and get an answer, and it'll be okay. But it's not going to be as good as a properly curated set of data, training the AI and a well-crafted prompt to get the information out, and someone who can really think about what it means to interpret it as well. And I think that continues to be really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Richard, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the conversation. I think it's a really eye-opening conversation, and something to think about, like not just dive and then think, but also sometimes you just should think first if this is the right moment to, and this is the right way to do things. So, Richard, thank you so much for your time and for the conversation.
Not at all. Thank you for having me. The only one other thing I would add, if I may, just quickly, is around the other, I think, exciting part of this is that it gives us a different way to get to answers as well. I think one of the challenges is trying to use AI to recreate old ways or replicate old ways of doing things. And actually, let's think about what AI does really well and use that as a tool to help us get to different way to get to really good answers, and combine that with lots of things. And yeah, I think there's just there's so much potential here. So thank you for the time today to talk to me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much, Richard, for the conversation. As I said, and as we discussed it in the episode, the link for the article is down there in the show notes. You can find both that article as also the researchable link, where you can find some other articles about synthetic data from different people with different opinions. So it's always a good read. And I hope you enjoy this episode. And until then, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.